Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering the Afterparty, Season 2, Episode 3, Travis. In this episode, we get to see the POV of Grace's old flame, and his genre is indeed, as I predicted, noir, and it is hilarious, and has made me kind of want to go back and watch some actual classic noir movies now. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. You guys. All right. So what I really, really like the most about this episode is the combo of how correct and incorrect I was about Travis. From the get-go, I was like, what if Travis is right about things? What if it turns out that he's actually like pretty good at finding out the truth and tracking down data and, whatnot. And it turns out he kind of is, but like not to the degree that he is attempting to paint it in this, right? So like he does bring them some actual information that is genuine. And there is a sense of like, there is a sense of awareness to him by the end of the episode in terms of how he reacts to them eyeballing him with deep reservations, to say the least. And I appreciate that because, like, you can be a real goof as long as you have got an understanding that that's what you are. It's the people that seem to really take themselves extremely seriously and not like be able to step outside their own perspective that can get tiresome for me. But I was like, oh, look, there he is. Travis is like kind of fessing up to the fact that he knows he's a bit of a joke. And I just appreciate that, to be honest. So let's just start from the beginning here, you guys. First of all, I also want to mention just how beautifully structured these episodes are. I just love this storytelling style, going from one POV to another. I'm trying to sort of keep my eye out for some things that might be telltale signs of whether somebody's like perspective is to be trusted or not. Because I had this very strongly in the last season with Jasper that it felt as if he was attempting to distract from the actual issues of the case with his highly colored, High School Musical version of events. And that was what sort of led me to like looking at him. But here, I'm not sure if they're going to do anything similar, like I could be sort of keeping my eye out for things that are storytelling distractions. And maybe that's not even part of like the factor here. Maybe somebody who does seem to have a lot of storytelling distractions, it's just going to turn out to be like, that's what they were like as a person. And it's not reflective of the veracity of their claims. So I just have to watch out for sort of making the assumptions that I'm going to be able to use the same tools to suss out who did it this season. And we're only like this is the third episode. We've only had 3 perspectives, one of which is Anik's. And because Anik, for me at this point, is the control, his POV barely even counts. I know Anik didn't do it. So in terms of like using perspectives to determine anything, I can take Anik's account at face value, I believe, in terms of his skills at observing people and sharing relevant information. I don't believe that he misrepresents things too much, but I definitely think that I can't look to him for any sort of like accidental giveaway the way that other people's perspectives might show up, because I am simply taking it for granted at this point that Anik isn't guilty. And I don't know if like in later seasons of this show, is it going to be Anik that's always our main guy? Because are they going to start every season with just his perspective then? I kind of don't want that. Maybe next season what they could do is start it with Zoe's perspective. And I've been sort of wondering, excuse me, I have the hiccups. I've been sort of wondering whether or not this season Zoe's perspective would show up, because then we would have 2 repeat POVs. And that's not to say that like we can't glean anything important from them, but the fun has been really distinctive energies coming from certain characters that manifest as a genre. And because we have seen the 2 of them, it's going to feel a little less fun, I think, unless they find a really exciting way to do that. So anyway, that's all just conjecture at this point. I also just want to address like the opening of this episode. We have like some drone footage around the outside of this amazing home. And my God, who lives like this? Like, you know, I know people do. I know that. But wow, this place is unbelievable. Every time I see it, I'm just like, Jesus Christ. So this is when we find, we have the moment with Zoe showing Anik what it is that she found in Edgar's pockets. The prescription for Adderall, which it says Grace told us that Edgar wasn't taking pharmaceuticals. And Zoe immediately is like, let me guess, you think Grace is lying. And she's just really aggro in her reaction here, which I was like, I didn't feel like that was anywhere in his tone when he said it. It felt for me like he was saying, oh, so she got it wrong. Not that she was lying. But Zoe is so defensive of her sister that she immediately like leaps to the worst possible conclusion. And she really puts Anik on the defensive repeatedly. And it's so frustrating because like, I just want people to be, look, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I cannot relate to people who think that they know for sure whether somebody would have committed a crime or not. You don't know anybody as well as you think you know them. And you can know them really goddamn well. And that doesn't like, I am so sorry, but anyone is capable of anything given the right circumstances. I firmly believe that. And you may think that it's an unthinkable thing, but if the storm is correct, I guarantee you that somebody is going to act in a way that you would not have expected, because people are full of surprises and full of secret motivations they haven't shared and full of, you know, secret shames that they're trying to protect or cover up or whatever. There are all kinds of like examples out there of people who really thought they knew a person and they fucking didn't. So I have very, very little patience with the like, oh, we have to get this person off because I know they didn't do it. You don't. You don't know that. You know that you believe they didn't do it. And you know that you love them. And those are not at all relevant to whether they did it or not. So you're going to have to step back. So anyway, he does the whole, like, I don't think she's lying unless you do. Like, you know, the whole, And then she brings out the cufflink, which it turns out, we find out later, isn't a cufflink. It's actually a letter G from a typewriter, because Hannah collects them. And I love Zoe's reaction to that, just saying like, oh, of course she does. And she keeps on doing, Zoe, this thing with like, find the cufflink, find the killer. And he says, that's good. I'm not sure I follow. But, and later on, she says something like, yeah, find the typewriter, find the killer. And Grace is like, wait, how? Why? What do you mean? And Zoe can't say. She just says, like, by the time they realize that it is missing off of one of Grace's typewriters, I keep wanting to say keyboard, that she, like, that, no, one of Hannah's keyboards, not Grace's. God, I'm tripping all over my characters here, guys. Sorry. But there is, like, the best that Zoe can suggest is that this means Hannah knows something. Which, no, it doesn't. This is the kind of thing where I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if it turned out, and this is, I am fully just throwing spaghetti at the wall here, you guys. I am not actually theorizing this, but I wouldn't be surprised if this G wound up being utterly irrelevant. What I keep thinking about is the fact that Edgar got that alert about his lizard having some sort of, like, it seemed like a health crisis. And he runs off, and I was like, is the lizard, like, did it try and swallow one of the keyboard, oh my God, typewriter keys? Because if it's, like, really into white chocolate chips, that could look like a white chocolate chip to a lizard. You know, like, from the right angle, little lizard's feeling a little snicky snacky, left to its own devices, just goes for a key, starts to choke, he gets an alert, rescues his little lizard, takes the typewriter key out of its mouth, puts it in his pocket. And why, that is the next question, would the lizard have been anywhere near this typewriter key in the first place? That I do not have any answer to. No suggestions, no theories, no wild surmises, nothing. So this is just, you know, I have a lot of, like, sort of partial thoughts, but that's all I've got. So, okay, this is when Travis comes in and says, I have this, like, folder full of all the evidence I need to prove Edgar is at the center of this financial conspiracy involving cryptocurrency. And if you get me a blank wall and, like, 300 thumbtacks, I can definitely... And she interrupts and is just like, oh, okay, you're one of those conspiracy guys. And he says, truth guys. And Danner says, okay, here's a truth. You told Edgar last night, you are going to die tonight. And he says, okay, that was taken out of context. Look at the folder again. Like, that's got, and she's like, all right, no. We've got the folder. We're going to look at it, but we need you to talk to us, and then we'll take care of all of that. We find out his last name is Gladrise. And at this time, Anik is still under the misapprehension that that was a cufflink with a G on it. So they are thinking that, like, whomever this belonged to, the G would be their initial. I don't think that at this point, now that we know what the key actually is, but this leads to Anik, like, underlining the G of Travis's last name as if this is very significant. I don't really think it is. So Anik is like, okay, so what's your deal? You showed up here and you were super obsessed with Grace. And he says, I'm not obsessed with her. I have a girlfriend in Poland. And I was like, oh boy. And Grace knows that and he does this, like, weird motion. And they're like, what is that? And he says, pretty handy with a broom. To which Danner says, yeah, that's how I can tell you've never swept before. I really did sort of like that moment, because from what we see of his life, it does seem probably like he has not had a lot of occasion to do any housework of his own, because evidently he still lives with his mom, who even, like, brings his mail to him and stuff. Lauren's in the chat and says, how cute do you look? Thanks, Lauren. I'm having a good hair day. So, okay, this, the noir, I just want to, like, mention some of the things that stood out to me about this genre in general, because there were a lot, I haven't seen a lot of noir detective stories. So most of the vibe that I am getting is third hand from having seen spoofs of noir detective stories over and over again in my life. I don't feel like as far as I can recall, that I have ever actually seen a genuine one. If I have, it's been so long. So I don't want to speak to how good of a representation this actually is, because I was able to, like, you know, in terms of the Fast and Furious type one with Brett last season, or rom-com, or, you know, like a lot of the genres I was familiar enough with to be like, that is dead on. This feels right to me, but I can't say that with any real sort of education behind that assertion. It just is my gut reaction to, like, this is perfect, even though I don't know that. The only things that I have to go off of are little clips that I have seen here and there. And genuine request, anybody listening who is a fan of this genre, if you've got some, like, absolute must-see noir flicks that you think should be on anybody's list who wants to get acquainted with this type of genre, please put them in, like, the comments on this on Patreon or in the Discord or whatever, because this got me really wanting to watch them. And the vibe of it is, and again, third hand, you've got, like, the hard-boiled detective who's got some sort of, like, secret or not even necessarily secret, but often secret past that's, like, got some real dark turns, maybe some shame, or they did some things they're not proud of or running away from, or even things that, like, we're supposed to believe they're not proud of, even though they are actually genuinely really badass. And the dude's a loner, and there are multiple women. Usually there's one that is supposed to be the good in distress damsel, and then there's the woman who's the, like, no good hussy trying to lead him astray. And then you've got, of course, probably for the damsel that's in distress, her abusive husband, partner, boyfriend, whatever. And he is trying to, like, keep her safe while keeping the American public safe, and also, like, shouldering the burden of being the guy who, you know what I mean? Like, who's willing to do whatever it takes. And it's very, very tired in terms of the trope, but it's the style that is so great. Black and white, obviously. Lots of very exaggerated, often, like, saxophone music. Wonderful. It also really got me appreciating how much the music from One Piece feels like this type of music sometimes. And I also really enjoyed the costumes. His outfit barely changes from what he's actually wearing, because this is clearly how he sees himself anyway. And the outfits that everybody is wearing, the music that is playing at the rehearsal dinner, and all of the vibe of it is just really, really fun. I thought it must have been a great time for all of these actors to get to, like, be a slightly different version of themselves, because something that happened specifically in this genre that I found really funny, due to the fact that you're dealing with, like, a genre that was really helmed by mostly white men, you have, like, the subtle racism of that hat that Feng is wearing at one point. You've got the different British accent that Sebastian is using when he's in the office with him, that feels like it's a much more high class, aggressive accent. It feels just so much more extreme, you know? I'd be curious what this actor's actual accent sounds like, because I don't know him well enough to tell. And just here and there, the way that people... Anik, what is happening? Anik has this, like, almost rodent-like quality to him. You know, he's got the little round glasses and this strange, like, high-pitched laugh that's like... I can't imitate it, but it is so not Anik at all. And I have to assume, this is specifically referring to like an actual character that is in noir canon somewhere that is really well known and maybe seen as a little bit of a joke by people. And they decided, okay, we're going to have Aniq be that person. I don't have the frame of reference. I don't know what they're referring to, but it feels so specific and so strange that it has to be something that they're pointing to explicitly. Again, if you know, please tell me. But, okay, so he starts off talking about how he answers the questions that Google can't. He's like showing up at his place, and there's a behavior like he's in this studio apartment and office. It turns out, of course, that he is living with his mother, and he gets the invitation and assumes that like the only reason that she would ever reach out to an ex with a wedding invite is because she is like camouflaging a cry for help. And we see a photo of the two of them that he still has on his dresser where they're both in like steampunk outfits and they're posing in front of what seems to be like a big green screen or something. Tons of gears, whatnot. It's very funny. And this is like, I'm going to give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt here, guys, because I'm going to be real with you. She reacts like giving you this invitation in her POV was a formality. I was hoping that you would just read between the lines. And it seems pretty clear from her point of view. What she intended was, I'm sending you this invite fully expecting that you will see it and realize that I am off the market and you will back off. Like there's a sense almost of that he has been trying to contact her and she has put him off. And now she's finally like, okay, dude, I'm getting married. So it's time for you to stop. Like you've really got to put an end to this. And while I definitely understand what she meant by sending him this invite, all I could think was how I would absolutely never even consider sending a wedding invite to an ex. And I don't know if that's just me or if it's like just the type of relationship that I have with my exes means that I wouldn't understand because some people are much more friendly with them. But the fact that she wasn't happy to see him at all leads me to believe that they aren't friends. Like, you know what I'm saying? And it just felt to me like the fact that he showed up, she was sort of going, I can't believe you would do it. You should have known I didn't want you here. And I was like, should he have known that? Because I wouldn't know what to think. You know, I would certainly not go more than likely, but I also would never send the invite to begin with. So I don't really know what the etiquette is surrounding this. But yeah, he winds up and we have this whole sequence where he's like, I decided to do some digging on Edgar. And it's interspersed with all of these things. You guys, I want to read this. Can I read this? Are you guys going to let me? I'm going to do it because when you pause the text that's on the screen, you can read it from beginning to end here on this article, Global Investor, a profile on Edgar Minos. The world of cryptocurrency has long been a cryptic one. By its very nature, crypto is designed to make its users anonymous on a worldwide web that's increasingly becoming identified. Traditionally, the enigmatic nature extends to pioneers as well. Very little is known about Satoshi Nakamoto, the founder of the ubiquitous Tibbs coins, and no one has even seen a picture of Jorpin Sherpley, the founder of Suckondee's coin. Oh my God, this is paying off so much more than I ever thought. But the newest crypto on the scene is hoping to change that. Its founder, Edgar Minos, is putting himself front and center. Next month, Minos is set to launch Bucephalus, a coin designed to operate almost as a token for Minos himself. Each purchase of the coin is effectively a share in Minos' financial portfolio, rendering itself as a sort of digital hedge fund for the people. Whereas hedge funds are traditionally reserved for the uber wealthy, Minos looks to change that. Oh, this is interesting. Minos himself is what's going to set Bucephalus apart from the competition, according to Minos' longtime business partner, Sebastian Drapewood. That's a good name. Is the market flooded with thousands of crypto coins? Of course, but there's only one Edgar Minos, Drapewood said. Minos has long been a figure in the more traditional world of hedge funds. His fund, Minos Management, has seen an on average 12% annual growth from its elite investors, a level of consistency that's almost unmatched among the big hedge funds of Silicon Valley, where Minos resides. If Minos hopes to transfer that profitability to the digital world with the advent of his, or no, not if Minos hopes to transfer. Make no mistake, the future is cryptocurrency, but how that looks and who dominates that future, that's up for grabs, Drapewood said over the phone from his San Francisco apartment. Take it from me, you do not want to bet against Edgar Minos. For Edgar, it's personal. For Minos, Bucephalus represents a step in a new direction that's been fairly traditional family business. His father, Alexander, is an investor who gives seed money to a number of extremely successful businesses. Alexander passed away last year in a plane crash. Details of the crash have been kept secret, but some claim Alexander fell asleep while piloting. The crash killed nearly a dozen people. Each purchase of the coin is effectively a share in Minos' financial portfolio, rendering itself a sort of digital hedge fund. Oh, okay. So they're just repeating this now. That makes sense, though, because it's like, not meant to really be read this way. Minos himself is what's going to set Bucephalus apart. But there's only one Edgar Minos. Okay, so yeah, that's just a repeat. That's really interesting because now I know about his father having killed some people. And while his father himself died and probably was also murdered, the fact that other people were killed might mean that somebody out there who lost a relative blames the Minos for the death. So that's sort of compelling and fun. All right, so what's the next one that pops up? Tech Money Man, Edgar Minos snakes things up. This is funny because it's like basically saying the same exact things. Oh, wait, but here we have the mention of the lizard. If it ain't broke, don't buy it. Alexander became renowned for repurchasing bankrupt companies. Alexander was a divisive man. He ran a tight ship at the something and an even tighter ship. Man, there's a lot here. A whale of a minnow. How do you forge your own path when your father is one of the most revered men in finance? By breaking all the rules of investment. And then we start to get inside the 9/11 conspiracy theories. Oh my God, I'm not even bothering with that. I won't read that one. But that all has popped up in the midst of Are Angels Real? Top 10 fantasy films of all time on YouTube. Lord of the Ring cosplay on Tumblr. Lord of the Ring cosplay boobs. Tony Shalhoub is the Antichrist proof. Honestly, that one really got to me. Grace's soon-to-be +1 has launched his own cryptocurrency. And he starts to talk about the blockchain, and immediately Danner says, no, we're not doing that. And she asks, Anik, do you understand the blockchain? And he says, yes, there's a ledger. Basically, that's the individual. And she says, no. I just need to know that you get it because I don't want to have to figure this out. Hard agree. I have listened to one particular podcast, and I will freely admit that the gimmick of the podcast is that these people do not know what they're talking about. So I'm not blaming them. But there was somebody who was trying to sort of explain blockchain, and it became increasingly apparent as he was explaining it that he had no idea what he was talking about, and that he was realizing as they were asking questions that the answers he had to give them were so circular that they weren't actually answering anything. And you could like hear in real time how he began to kind of be like, wait, maybe this doesn't mean anything. And I was like, maybe it doesn't. But yeah, so he mentions crypto was supposed to be an equalizer, but then scammers came in and I fell for one, a scam. That mook took every last dollar I had. And I'm going to say this, when he says I fell for one of them, he then shakes his head and goes, a scam. And I was like, oh, okay, so you fell in love with a scammer is what happened. Because that's the vibe it gave. It was very much feeling like, I fell for one of them, and there's a faraway, like, regretful look in his eyes. And then he has to clarify, I mean a scam. We all thought that's what you meant anyway, dude. But because you have clarified, I think there's something else happening here. And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if it turned out that, like, he was trying to get back at somebody and it was misdirected, and maybe it wound up with Edgar dead, even though that wasn't who he had intended to hurt. I don't know, but, you know, there's just a feeling here of there is more to what went down in Travis's past than he is telling. The fact that he mentions having been scammed, and it's just this, like, passing comment, and there isn't more digging into what that really was, how it went down. I really want to know what that is. Like, maybe it was Sebastian that ripped him off, but then it would be Sebastian that he fell in love with, and I don't get the feeling that either of them are into dudes, although I could be wrong. So maybe it's Hannah? That doesn't feel right. I don't know. But anyway, he says, when I saw that invite, I saw a second chance. I couldn't go back and stop the man behind coitus interruptus, but maybe I could stop Edgar from getting away with it. I don't know. Is coitus interruptus the real thing? Is it a guy? Is it? I don't know. It feels like there's something else happening here. And when Anik is like getting away with what, he says the 5 biggest investors in Edgar's crypto coin are shell companies owned by Edgar. And Danner is like, what is wrong with that? And I'm like, come on. But I know they have to explain it for the audience. He's saying that Edgar used his own money to artificially inflate the value of his cryptocurrency. And the proof was right there in the RSVP. And I love this so much. He shows them, he had taken like a Xerox of the invitation, and he is circling at the bottom where it's like the choices for the entrees, and it just says tech scam. And Anik says, okay, so you think that Grace left a secret code for you in the food choices on the wedding invite? And I adore Danner just turning and laughing and saying he cute. I swear to God, sometimes there's nothing else to be done with people who think this way. This is one of my favorite bits, is that they are able to like somehow get it across that he has gotten some real information here. He has uncovered something genuine, but also really show off some of the more desperate parts of a lot of conspiracy theorists, and the circling of random letters acting like that means something is such a huge offender in terms of like alleged proof. You can do that with any message that you're trying to uncover, quote unquote. You could find the letters in place to make the words appear for that thing, because that's what you're looking for. It's just so ludicrous, and it is done a lot. But anyway, so he says Edgar was as dirty as the boots on a box turtle. Grace knew it, and she needed me to prove it. I am going to die laughing if it turns out that really was like a coded message in the invite. Like, that would be very funny. So at this point, we take a break from him and we go to Grace and Chloe hanging out at the balcony, or no, at the back porch. And Zoe's like, I know I say the wrong thing sometimes, but you know I'm just trying to help, right? And Grace just sort of makes a face. And she says, all right. And she's about to go. And then Grace is like, look, I do need your help. I need to get out of this dress. Look how many fucking buttons there are. Please. So they go back to her room. And this is when they talk about the cufflink and what it can be. And they decide that they're going to go and look in Hannah's yurt that she lives in. I am really interested now that it's made clear the next episode is going to be about Hannah, what genre her movie is going to be. Because like sometimes I can get it from the thumbnail and sometimes I can't quite. She is wearing this sort of like neckerchief, and she looks like she's wearing something from like the early 70s. And I don't know if it's going to be like, you know, some sort of like groovy exploitation type, you know, or I don't know, because she's so quirky, you know, she's got a ton of hobbies, collects a lot of weird stuff. And so a part of me is sort of like, is it going to be one of those, oh my God, what is his name? The guy who did The Life Aquatic, and his movies are like really, really stylized. And there is almost a sort of like 70s or early 80s flavor to them, but they're also kind of timeless because they're at times it's like modern tech and stuff like that. It's usually just sort of the costuming and the color schemes that really place it in time. So I was like, maybe that's what we're going to go with, is a sort of, because that, when I think of like, you know, quirky movies, that's always the director that I think of. If I could only remember his name. Oh my God. I'm just going to look him up. Hold on. Life Aquatic, because that's the one I remember. And I remember going into it thinking it looked fun. And then it turned out to be like such a bummer. And I was taken really off guard by it. Wes Anderson and Noah Baumbach. So yeah, Wes Anderson is the one that I was thinking of with that. So maybe, but I don't feel like that quite is the look of that thumbnail. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. I'm just really curious what it's going to be. So anyway, we then go to Travis showing up at the, what do you call it? Oh my God, I keep wanting to say engagement party, rehearsal dinner. I love that they're playing that bum ba ba bum ba ba bum ba ba bum ba 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 da ba da ba da. That was like a jam that I loved so much as a kid. Every time that I had the opportunity to hear it, you guys who are young don't know what it was like to be like super into a song and only get to hear it whenever somebody out in the world played it in a commercial or a movie, because I didn't know the name of the song. You know, and so even if I did, like finding it to buy, it was just a whole thing. And nowadays, that song plays somewhere and you just pull out your phone and fucking Shazam it, and then you can download it and listen to it until your ears fall off. And I am so jealous. I like can't imagine the music that I would have absolutely drowned myself in, because as a kid, I just didn't know how to find it. But anyway, so he swans in. There's this whole thing with all of these people like passing by him and admiring him. All these women calling him like a heartthrob, and Anique going, wow, as he steps past him. It's very fun. And then we have Grace, and oh my God, she looks fucking fantastic. She is wearing a white dress with this like short fur bolero jacket and this really like, I think it's ostrich feathers or marabou. It's a really big white fascinator in her hair that is a similar like fluffy texture to the jacket, which this aesthetic is what I assume, you know, when I was thinking about like there's always going to be the damsel and then there's the bad girl, and the damsel is often in whites or pale pinks or when I'm talking colors, obviously the movies are black and white, but I'm thinking about like when people have made fun of this in modern stuff, the color scheme thing, you've got to pick stuff that's girlish and innocent looking. But yeah, she just looks so good in this. I love it so much. And eventually, like, he is walking past people, and there's this thing he keeps doing where he's offering people hams. And it turns out that what he means are Alexander Hamiltons. But nobody's ever heard this. He's just making it up. And this is one of my favorite parts of this, is like the lingo that he just invents. He says, I've got a couple hams with your name on it. And the waiter just looks at him uncertainly. And he says, Hamilton, sawbucks, 10 spots. And the waiter simply says, I don't know how to help you. And I was like, that is the correct response, actually. Like, you know? So this is when Fang says, I don't deal in crypto. My game is ice. Of course, making it sound like he deals drugs, which is not what's going on. Then he mentions an ice guy whose name was the Iceman Cometh, but comes spelled with a U. And instantly, I'm going to go talk to somebody else. And Feng just walks away. I kept striking out, so I decided to go closer to the source. And he walks up to Isabel and says, like, your son's up to something, isn't he? And she says, what do you know about it? He says, I know about cryptocurrency. Web cheddar? Cyber cabbage. You guys, I'm so sorry. I forget he says web cheddar, and I am never going to recover from that now that I have, like, really stopped and thought about it. Oh my God, web cheddar. That is fucking awful. Oh God, that is hilarious. Jesus Christ, cyber cabbage. And your face tells me you're waist deep in the same dirty deal as your womb fruit. She slaps him in the face. He starts to say that felt like an answer. She slaps him on the other side. And then he says, I only got 2 chi. And then she does it again. She hits him, I think, 6 times? Yes, 6 times. And then simply says, how dare you wear white at a wedding? And walks away. She's starting to grow on me, guys. I am not going to lie. She is so strange. I just might like her. I think I might. That was really weird. Like, you really think that she's offended by something else. And I think she's dead ass serious when she says that she was hitting him for an entirely different reason. Oh, anyway. So he goes and sits down at the table. This is when he runs into Anik, who is acting so strangely. I love his little, like, polka dot bow tie that he's wearing. And he's got this very sort of, like, quick and furtive sort of manner. When he says, like, what's the deal with you? And he says, I'm fixing to steal the sister of the bride away from little Lord Fish and Chips. I don't know how he got through that line, you guys. He's got a little bit of an accent put on for this as well. It's just so weird. Oh my God. So at this point, Travis says, what's a squirrel like Edgar with all the acorns in the world doing dipping his maw in the crypto trough? And that's when Anik just says, time to switch tables, and gets up and leaves. And they have him, like, looking down his glasses at him in this truly bizarre manner. Like, this has to be a reference. I would love to see who it is that he's basing this off of. But Travis takes it's time to switch tables as a code, and he will not believe Anik when he keeps insisting that's not what was going on. I was literally just trying to switch tables. So eventually he goes up to the bar. He keeps trying to bribe people to help him. Nobody knows what the fuck he's talking about. And eventually here comes Hannah, and she calls him Charlie. She picks up this coupe glass martini, gorgeous glassware. Her hair is all done. I love the way that she, like, looks him up and down and just does a sort of, and then gives him a wink. And she just cozies up to him and says, well, aren't you a box full of goodies? And he says, you're quite the taffy sampler yourself. The kind of dame who smashes your heart into pieces like you find in a puzzle too confusing for your cousin's idiot twins. Oh my God. Amazing. I want somebody to call me a taffy sampler. And she says something about, I love how your hair sticks to your scalp in all of these weird places, like a like spaghetti that's been overcooked. And he says, yeah, well, you've got a nose that looks like an ice pick stuck in a Jeep's trunk. I don't know what that means. I have no idea. But she just laughs eventually. She just has a moment of like, what the fuck? And then finally she says, what do you say you and me get out of here? We pop some hoobity-doobity fun petals and kiss each other's faces and so forth. You guys, hoobity-doobity fun petals. I know I'm going to forget it. And I'm already sad. That is tragic. Oh, I want to hold on to hoobity-doobity fun petals very, very much. Christ. So, finally, she tells him that, you know, I'm sister to the bride, or sister to the groom, adopted. And I was sort of like, you know, this adopted thing, they keep pointing it out so purposefully. What if she's not? What if she's actually a blood relative and they just keep saying she's adopted? Maybe that's what's going on here. I wonder if she's just like, yeah, if I get rid of enough of the relatives, then the blood test will show that I'm like next of kin, and that will be enough for me to inherit after all. I don't know. So anyway, he walks away. I love when he's just like, and I'll tell you one other thing, I don't have a boner right now. And he walks away and says, that was a lie. My luck wasn't the only thing that was hard. And you see him in the background just like adjusting himself. So unfortunate. Danner, you're an only child, huh? I resent that. As an only child, how dare you, Danner? How dare you? So, then, Uncle Ulysses is brought in. And he does ride in on a horse. All of that is the same. But instead of simply greeting his nieces, he goes up on stage and he grabs the mic and he begins to sing. And both Zoe and Grace get up at the same time in practically unison. And they begin to perform on either side of him, singing along. And honestly, it's a great moment. I really love it. So he's like, all right, well, while everybody is distracted, I'm going to, go and find some evidence. I'm going to start to like rifle through people's offices and stuff. And he happens to be leaving at exactly the same time as Feng, but Feng does not seem to notice him. He's like almost trying to use Feng as like shielding as he sneaks out in the most obtrusive sense you could think of. It was really wild. So he goes into Edgar's office. He finds a pilot license that's a month old. And he's looking at all of this stuff. Like there's a little statue of a lizard that looks like his, what is her name? Roxana. There's a tray that's got a bunch of like random stuff in it. I can't tell what some of that stuff is. There's like, it's all like old screws and maybe a comb. I don't know what that stuff is. But anyway, he's looking around and looking through the papers that have been left on the desk, and he finds a list of names. He takes a photo of that. There's something that's like got a bunch of star reviews next to it. And the books that are on the shelf, he points out that there were a lot of books about magic, sleight of hand, Houdini, magic naturally, one of them says. And as he's continuing to poke around, he gets caught by Sebastian. He also takes a picture of a map on the wall because Patagonia has a red tack in it. All of the other tacks look to be white or gray and white. So Patagonia is the only place that seems to be standing out to him. But no idea what the relevance is of that. And I love the way that Sebastian like handles himself as he walks in. I want to note too how different his hair looks here, because of the noir thing, it's been very slicked back. But when we were in Grace's POV, he had much more of like, I don't even want to call it a tousled look. It was so much more than that, so exaggerated. And it's just really fun to see the way that they style everybody. So Sebastian's like, you weren't trying to get in the safe, were you? And he tries to be like, what safe? And Sebastian's like, that giant door, that safe right there that's very obvious that nobody could possibly miss. Don't play silly sausages with me. What are you doing here? Don't make me beat it out of you. No one no one wants to see a man in white pants shit himself. And he tries to say that he wants to purchase some crypto and thought maybe Sebastian could help him. Sebastian's got a look on his face like he knows very well that's not the case. But then he brings up the horse and he says the name totally wrong. Bookie Phallus, I think, is the way he says it. And Sebastian has a moment here where he says, Edgar named it after his father, who was obsessed with Alexander the Great's horse. And as he's saying it, he stops and says that the name of the horse, of course. And he just darts out. I have no idea, because Bucephalus doesn't have a G in it, so that can't be relevant to the typewriter thing, I wouldn't think. It seems like he was trying to like get a password to something, but that feels really obvious. I don't know. And finally, I knew I had to get out before someone else came in, and I had to have a go at that safe. He gives it a couple turns, doesn't do anything. And eventually he finds this key in the desk drawer that does seem to actually be written in code. And he takes a photo of that. And then later on, he determines that this is Morse code. And it's just so painful to watch him try and like figure this out. And the way that he is like, Bucephalus, a horse, like a Trojan horse. What's inside a Trojan horse? More horse, Morse code. Oh my God, you guys. So we get this sequence of him like circling and crossing things out, and it's absolute unadulterated nonsense. What he thinks he's come up with is that Edgar was going to fake his own death that night and take off, leaving his wife holding the bag for his crypto crimes, basically. And of course, both Anik and Danner are like, oh, guy, come on. This is nonsense. Like, you're saying, oh, well, he faked his own death. He's dead. We all saw that he is actually dead. And he's like, yeah, no, he is dead, but he was planning on faking his death. And marrying him was part of his plan. And that way, the heat would be taken off of him. And he tells them he was going to try and stop the wedding. It turns out Hannah acts as if she's going to assist him with stopping the wedding, and tells him, like, we're going to set up a whole thing when I give the signal. She says, I can steer the ship any way we need, so I say the word, you drop the bomb. And I love the fact that they're not smoking. They're just eating little lollipops. They both have like dum-dum lollipops instead of smoking. There's something about this that is just touching my heart. I love it. I love it so much. But when it comes time, he keeps trying to bribe one of the women sitting next to him to stand up and make a scene, and she won't do it. So eventually the wedding just goes off without a hitch. And he claims that what happened was that he got, like, tricked by Hannah into thinking she was going to assist him, but actually she wanted the wedding to go through. And initially, when they think that Hannah wanted to stop the wedding, both Anik and Danner are like, did she have something against Grace, or did she have something against Edgar? But now it seems like she wanted the wedding to go through. So who knows? Now that she's been brought up, we go to Grace and Zoe, who are looking all over this yurt, and they don't really seem to find anything. We see like lots of little, there's a whole array of typewriters. We've got a bunch of anchors, butterflies. There's just a lot in here that's like, it doesn't look like anybody actually lives here. This looks like an Instagram yurt. You know what I'm saying? But they're in the midst of talking to each other about whether or not Grace is going to get arrested. And they see, I love this so much, you guys. They see Hannah coming, and they each make these sad attempts at hiding. Pitiful. Eventually, they're just like, you know what? Let's just jump out the window. And they have to actually like leap out in this really zany fashion. Like it really does feel like screwball comedy shit. And they close the window behind them. But there was a big part of me that was like, there is no way in hell anybody didn't hear or see them go flying out the window just now. Come on. I genuinely don't know. I feel like this yurt is not all it seems. There's something going on here. It just doesn't look like she fucking lives here. It just doesn't. We have more of Grace and Zoe arguing about how Zoe is constantly attempting to run Grace's life and tells her, I'm going to rescue you with or without your stupid help. And then she starts to leave when Grace points out a lot of the plants that you're walking through right now are poisonous. And they both sort of realize the significance of that. So jumping ahead a little bit, let's see. I couldn't stop Grace from marrying Edgar. Maybe I could at least stop him from running off and screwing her over. So he waits for his moment. And apparently him saying you're going to die tonight was him accusing Edgar of, I know what it is you're going to do. You're going to attempt to fake your own death. But it doesn't sound right to me. That's not the way you would say that, you know? I don't know. It's just weird. He goes up to the DJ at one point. I'm trying to find more info about a crime. The kind of crime you smell for miles, but one that you've got to be close to see. Oh my God. This is when Edgar takes off in the middle of the first dance, and Travis, thinking, oh, okay, here's his escape plan, chases after him, runs into Anik, who is on the ground looking for something seeming extremely shady, and oh my God, I forgot about the fact that they're doing the jitterbug, and he calls it a fad. You're a bunch of sheep. So he runs out of there. He is too late. After being held up, he doesn't know which direction Edgar went in. And he sees somebody walking up to the house. I can't tell if that's actually Edgar or not. It might be Sebastian. Somebody clocks him on the back of the head. And they try and say that maybe he just fell. I tend to believe that he actually got knocked out. And it was a tire iron in his version. Who knows what the fuck it was. When he comes to, Sebastian, or no, it's not Sebastian. Somebody else is in the background who says, forget it, Jake, party's over. I think it might just be one of the catering guys. And he looks over to see the bus taking off, which I guess is supposed to have the wedding party in it. I don't know. So I headed inside to find a couch or a soft table to crash on. And he walks in to the after party, so to speak. There's way fewer people in his version of it than in the version we saw from Anik's POV. He goes up to the bar and he tries to order something, but it's the Funkle, who is not a bartender, and just is telling him, you're going to have to pour your own drink. But he decides he's going to take a whole bottle and just drink right out of it, like the fucking drama queen he is. And this is when he confronts him in this extremely dramatic fashion. I love Edgar just staring him down, almost expressionless, just a sort of vague interest and curiosity on his face. The way that he comes at him, He says, I'm sick and tired of you fat cats who make doo-doo pies. I'm sorry, guys. In our bowls of clam chowder and try to pass it off as saltine crackers. I had my entire life stripped from me from a scammer like you, and I will jump off the Bay Bridge before I see that done to Grace. And Edgar, clearly, whatever it is that he has drunk or taken is beginning to have an effect on him, because he turns to Grace and he gets this weird expression and puts his hand out the way that you do when your balance is starting to be off. And as Travis is coming closer and closer to him, he begins to look more and more genuinely afraid until he finally says, "You, sir, are melting," and just boops him on the nose. So that's your play, huh? Melt your own head? Your face looks like one of those hot clocks from that Spaniard's painting. Well, sorry, Dolly, but I ain't buying it. Now your horns are growing, devil. And, this is eventually when Grace gets up and ushers him out. And I just, the whole scene just feels so off. He decides, I'm going to go upstairs and I'm going to drop a bunch of pistachios outside the door so that when he comes out, it will be so loud that it will wake me up. And I'm going to sit here in the hall and wait for him to attempt to make his escape and catch him. And that is why in the morning when she wakes up and finds him dead and screams, Travis is the first one outside her door. And her acting saying that she found him dead is so great. It seems so perfect to me for that era. And when we come back to the present, Danner's like, yeah, so that all sounds like you were very wrong. He wasn't trying to escape. What do you mean? And he's just like, you guys are not getting it. He was. And he's like, dude, do you know how you sound? And he says, yeah, I know how I sound. And he takes his hat off finally, which for me signals he's taking off this persona a little bit. I'm a loser, the sucker who got tricked out of all his own money. But I'm not dumb. I know stuff. I know Edgar was a bad man. And he was using those shell companies to dump cash to pump up his own crypto. He was not a good guy, and it is all there. All the evidence is in that folder. I may have gone out on a limb for some of it, but I knew he was up to something, and I still know it. And I couldn't let him trick Grace. You know how special she is. And he seems very heartfelt here. I can't tell. I'm sort of wondering if Sebastian was the one who was propping up the shell companies and Edgar didn't know. Edgar just seemed like such an innocent to me that it's hard to believe that he was this mastermind, but it just might be, maybe that's me being a little bit ableist even. I don't know, But yeah, he just in the end says I am over Grace, but I couldn't just sit by and do nothing. I had screwed up enough. And that made me really wonder, what is it that you did, dude? What is it in the past how did your relationship end originally, So eventually, this is when Chloe comes running in and says she found the murder weapon, that she used an app to identify the plants in Hannah's garden, and that one of them causes hallucinations. Out of all of them, the one called Devil's Trumpet. And they happen to be in the centerpieces. If mixed into tea, could cause hallucination strong enough 30 minutes after you hallucinate, you die. So, yeah, that is what they are saying the murder weapon is at this point. I can't tell if this is a red herring or if this is the thing. This is what I was assuming from the start, and that's why I suspected Hannah. Now it feels too easy because they've already discovered this. I don't know. And the episode ends with them being like, well, who would have known that? And they all say Hannah. And then we go over to Hannah, who is literally firing arrows outside her yurt in the yard, looking very devilish. and the episode ends. So that is a wrap on that. All right, guys, I have to wrap. I'm over time, but thank you guys again for joining me. Hope you enjoy the coverage. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.